Good evening, everyone. My name is Martine Koblenz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the County Equity and Inclusion Officer here in Clackamas County. Tonight, we have our Board of County Commissioners, Chair Bernard, Commissioner Schrader, Commissioner Humberston, Commissioner Savis, and Commissioner Fisher, and we have our County Administrator, Gary Schmidt. We are here tonight because our Board of County Commissioners wanted to provide a space to hear from you regarding race issues in Clackamas County. I will be moderating the listening session tonight. While the county has made efforts towards building a community that is inclusive, the board recognizes that the county has more work to do and is committed to that work. Meaningful engagement with community is of the utmost importance if we are to understand the issues that are present in our county and within our communities. This listening session is one important step toward engaging with you, our community. The commissioner's role is to listen. They will be taking note of what you have to say, but will not be responding to each comment this evening. We have structured it this way because we want to allow for the public to share why the topic of race is important for you, what your experiences have been regarding race in the county, and what recommendations you might have for the board at this time. They will have an opportunity to comment at the end to share what resonates for them and to express their appreciation to you. As you know, in June of this year, the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution condemning violence and racism directed at Black, African American, and all people of color. We acknowledge that our nation's future well-being relies on a public system that confronts systemic bias, institutionalized racism, and supports efforts to ensure that Black, African American, and all people of color thrive in the communities where they live. At this time, I'm going to ask each commissioner to read a paragraph from the resolution, starting with Chair Bernard, paragraph 1 under resolve.
Clackamas County Board of Commissioners and all its staff join with America in sharing its anger, shame, and sorrow about the intolerable violence directed at Black, African Americans, and people of color.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader, paragraph 2. Oh, you're muted.
Clackamas County Board of Commissioners condemns the violent and disrespectful treatment of Black, African American, and people of color. Our organization does not and will not tolerate nor accept in any way treatment of Black, African American, or people of color that degrades their dignity or disregards their human life.
Thank you. Commissioner Humberston, paragraph 3.
Thank you. Clackamas County Board of Commissioners calls on all elected officials and all government agencies to recognize the value and the contribution of the lives of Black, African Americans, and all people of color to remove barriers to greater equality.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher, paragraph 4.
Clackamas County will review all of its policies and ordinances for any discriminatory impacts and practices and encourage other jurisdictions to do the same.
Thank you. Commissioner Savis, paragraph 5.
Clackamas County Board of Commissioners will engage in listening and learning opportunities with communities of color to learn of their experiences to better help in improving policies and practices that include, but not limited to, law enforcement, justice system, economic disparities, education disparities, and land use and transportation policies that displace communities and low-income families disproportionately.
Thank you. I recognize as your moderator that we all have different experiences, and those experiences inform our perspective and lens on this issue. For some of you, you may share stories of painful circumstances around race that you experienced. We want to allow you the time to share as fully as possible. Generally, we are hoping to keep statements to about 4 minutes to allow for others to share as well. This topic can bring about discomfort and emotions. Please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. For those of you speaking tonight, thank you in advance for sharing. Sharing your own personal experiences takes a toll, and I want to acknowledge that and appreciate you. Here are the few guidelines for the speakers in tonight's session. I ask that you speak for yourself, your own experience, and your own perspectives. Please refrain from using specific names of public members. As a moderator, I will interrupt you from speaking if there is use of derogatory language and/or slurs. I hope that we can make this a space where we can speak our truth responsibly and listen to one another to better understand. We are recording this session and it will be available later this week online to view. With that, I'd like to invite Tori Blackwell, who is a member of our Leaders of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Council, to share first. The Leaders for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Council members are county residents, community members who volunteer their time to advise Clackamas County on how to advance the work of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you, Tori, for joining us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I wrote something so that I wouldn't sound like a crazy person and waste anybody's time. First, I want to thank the county commissioners for being willing to host this town hall on race issues in Clackamas County. I keep hearing people say things like, this is not needed, racism doesn't exist, and all it does is cause trouble and division when we talk about it. When did we fix racism? Did we fix it in 1863 when Lincoln freed the slaves? Did we fix it in 1868 as part of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution? Did we fix it after Brown versus Board of Education and the desegregation of schools in 1954? Did we fix it in the Voting Rights Act in 1965? Did we fix it in 1973 when Oregon as a state ratified the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution after they had rescinded their ratification in 1868? Did we fix it in 2002 when the remnants of racist language were removed from the Oregon Constitution? Did we fix it in 2007 when we elected the first US president of African American ancestry? As you can see from this very brief snapshot, it is an issue that we have been trying to fix for hundreds of years. We've taken many small steps forward, but the only way to continue moving forward is by willing to have the conversation. I often hear people say that they have never seen racism, or as white people, they have been the victim of racism themselves. Well, the percentage of Black people in Oregon is just under 2% compared to 13% for the country. And in Clackamas County, that number is just over 1%. It's easy to say you have never seen racism when you aren't spending every minute of every day watching the interactions Black people have with others. Racism is really the effect of a power imbalance. One group has more power than the other and uses race to make decisions that are harmful. This is different from prejudice or bias. White people can say they have experienced prejudice. Maybe someone called them a name or did not want to talk to them because of the color of their skin. They cannot say they have experienced actual racism though, as they likely have not had trouble finding a job because their name looked Black and they were passed over as a result. They have not received poor medical care because of their skin color. They have not been stopped by police and treated differently because of their skin color. Why do we need to care about racism? We need to care because the impacts are huge. Life expectancies are about 3.5 years lower for Black people versus white people, according to the CDC. In 2019, the Joint Task Force Addressing Racial Disparity in Home Ownership, that's an Oregon group, noted that although about 61% of people own their home in Oregon, 65% of white people own their homes, while 32% of Black people own their home. In 2016, the Federal Reserve noted that the median income for a white family is almost double that of a Black family, and the median net worth of a white family is almost 10 times more than that of a Black family. The American Civil Liberties Union notes that although Black students make up 16% of public school enrollment, 31% of school arrests are of Black students, and they are 3 times more likely to be expelled, and expelled students are 3 times more likely to end up in the juvenile justice system. Why do these problems exist? They exist because we have not completed the work to break destructive cycles by turning systems that do not benefit all into systems that do benefit all and lead to positive outcomes for everyone. Personally, I have managed to be successful, and overall, I would say I enjoy living in Clackamas County. But I still experience racism on a regular basis and have to constantly think about what I do, what I say, and where I go in Clackamas County. I've had multiple instances where I had a negative interaction with someone while I was trying to do something pretty simple. Get gas, enter a store, get service at a restaurant, and ended up having trouble getting those simple tasks done. When I bring these events up to people, it's not uncommon for me to get the response that it was me overthinking things or trying to see race in everything. Most of the time, I actually assume the person was having a bad day and maybe I'm just overreacting. But boy, do a lot of people around here seem to have bad days. In most cases, I try to be understanding, not get upset, and smile. I smile a lot, and I'm sure people just assume it's because I am a nice person. That part's true. But I also smile a lot because I get to represent every Black man that person has interacted with, or maybe the first Black man that person has interacted with. If that interaction is negative, my lack of a smile might reinforce that person's view of an entire race of people. When I get mistaken as a store employee, I will often still try to help that person anyway, because even though I'm a little offended, I still have to recognize that what happens after the encounter is what that person will take home with them, and that this will reflect not on me, but on Black people in general. I try not to get mad often in public because an angry Black man is often viewed as a threat, and the response to that perceived threat can be life-altering for me. We also have larger displays of racism in our county. I see Confederate flags in our area regularly, and I just saw a Proud Boys flag waving at an event that was on what would have been my normal route to work. The Proud Boys, if you're not aware, is a far-right group with ties to racism and violence, considered a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. The evening of the day, the event where the Proud Boys flag could be seen, someone with ties to the Proud Boys was involved in a shooting in Oregon City. So now I have to smile, never get angry in public, and watch out for Proud Boys that may feel emboldened enough to shoot me for being Black in Clackamas County just to go out for groceries. So I've given you context, history, and a reason to continue talking about race in Clackamas County. What do we do next, though? An easy answer would be for us all to be better human beings. We can all learn how to listen to each other, how to compromise, and how to disagree but still be willing to talk to each other. That leaves the other part of the answer unaddressed, and that is to do the work to fix our systems that have racism and inequity built into them. Many of us are well-meaning individuals that help perpetuate systems that are designed to keep certain people down, whether it be on purpose or by accident. We need ways to hold our elected officials and institutions accountable. We need the county to invest in systems that provide public access to information in ways that the public can understand, with information provided transparently so that we as a community can hold people accountable for their actions and measure their progress. We need the county to invest in fair and affordable housing programs so that we can improve the rates of home ownership. We need the county to invest in job creation programs and policies that will encourage people from diverse backgrounds to come to work in Clackamas County. We need the county to invest in programs that result in more contracting with small businesses run by underrepresented groups. We need to look at our recruitment and hiring practices and be willing to invest in strategies that bring more diversity to the Clackamas County workforce, since having diverse voices involved in decision-making actually results in better decisions being made. We need the county to invest in art and cultural events that can be used to lift up unheard voices and share their stories. We need the county to lead with an equity lens first, not as an addendum once decisions have already been made. I would recommend the commissioners review the policy demand section of the Reimagine Oregon project, as they have listed a number of policies and programs that our county could consider to help address these and many other issues to improve equity and diversity in our county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tori. I appreciate you sharing. At this time, if you would like to make a comment, please utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom. That's on the top or the bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device. And if you're on the phone and want to give a comment, please hit *9, and that'll let us know that you have a comment. Okay, at this time, I do see Tracy Hill.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Tracy.
Okay, hi. So I wrote something to present at the Gladstone listening session, and so I'm just going to share that here, a little bit edited. So, hello, my name is Tracy Hill. I was raised in Gladstone. I'm here tonight with my smart, talented, beautiful daughter who is Black to share our Gladstone experience. Sierra started her junior year at Gladstone High School in the fall of 2016. We were so hopeful of Gladstone after she dealt with so many different racial issues at Canby High School. Gladstone High School was so much more diverse as far as she could see. She was called the N-word in the first week of school. During her attendance at Gladstone High School, Sierra endured what seemed like very interesting situations that seemed very racist. When money went missing from a locker, a white student told the white PE teacher that it must have been Sierra and another student of color. Even with the other students present, these two Black girls were singled out and scrutinized. Number 2, Sierra faced bullying and discrimination from teachers, one in particular who knew and understood the IEP in place, but did not adhere to it or provide her appropriate accommodations. Others in the class were given similar accommodations. There was a secret meeting held by the superintendent for Black and brown students to ask their opinions on the current curriculum and whether they should change it. Although this seems proactive and helpful, parents were not contacted. This is another example of the system asking the very people it oppresses to carry the burden of enacting meaningful change. In the community, she has experienced the following. Number 1, Sierra has on multiple occasions experienced almost purposely being run over while walking in crosswalks within the city. Number 2, Sierra has been watched and followed around the store multiple times at Walgreens, both Oak Grove and Clackamas Fred Meyer, for what seems like absolutely no reason. Number 3, she has to endure racial slurs by people driving by when she's merely walking down the street with her friends who are white. Number 4, there was a Snapchat going around of a student at Gladstone High, pictured with a black charcoal face mask. The caption read, "I am an N-word." Of course, she used the actual racial slur, which I refused to do. Nothing was done about it. Why? Because she's a star soccer player. I attended Gladstone High from 1984 to 1988, and they have always put sports and their star athletes above the law. I see things haven't changed a bit. Here are some examples of our very own neighborhood. Number 1, we live at the River Greens apartment complex, which has a pool. The manager of the complex has called the police on my daughter and her friends while using their own pool. I don't have to tell you how these situations can end. Number 2, a few weeks ago, there was an incident in the parking lot between a Black man and a white woman where the white woman threatened to call the cops. My daughter was taking out the garbage and had to witness this. I'm just glad she called me out there when she did. I somewhat de-escalated it by interrupting to ask what was going on. One woman even had her pit bull out there and was easing it toward the man. All of this happened within minutes. If the cops had been called, it likely would have made everything worse. I screamed, "Don't call the cops on Black people," but was called a bitch before re-entering my apartment. Racism exists in this city, our city. I see it in my neighborhood, the schools, even on the streets. I'm here tonight because I truly believe Gladstone and Clackamas County can become much more inclusive and accepting of all people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Okay, I see Barbara. Barbara, if you can unmute yourself.
There,
Okay.
I'm muted. Thank you. I have been very struck by what the previous speakers have said. And one of the common threads is not being believed that these things happen, that the constancy of it. And I actually talked with Ken Humberston last year, not long after some incidents where I was run off the road by, I believe they were Proud Boys. I have been run off the road on 213 3 times, and I finally removed the Obama sticker from the back of my car because I have a little tiny Yaris. And these events always occurred right after, you know, some sort of white supremacist gathering in Portland. And what I don't think Clackamas County officials understand is that these people are staying here when they come from Washington, and also they are from Oregon, that they are in Clackamas County. There are regular, like on July 4th, this cavalcade of white pickup trucks with, I'll just say it, with Trump flags, with Confederate flags, went zooming down Beaver Creek Road again. One of the trucks that ran me off the road had Nazi insignia on the mud flaps. The other was flying Confederate flags and Trump flags. And the first one that happened a long time ago was also flying Trump flags and Confederate flags. And when I call the sheriff's office about it, I am not believed. They, you know, one guy actually told them that he ran me off, that he was menacing me because I was going 35 in a 55. And the thing that happened was the sheriff started lecturing me about impeding traffic, which I was not doing. And when I tried to explain to him what I thought was happening, I was not believed. I feel very grateful. I wanted to talk about this at the Beaver Creek Hamlet meeting, and I am still grateful that Tammy Stevens believed me, that Ken Humberston believed me. And that's what I want to say to you folks. You've got to believe people making reports about these racist behaviors, or it's not going to change. When it doesn't happen to you, it's hard to imagine. And when you would never do something like this to another person, it's really hard to imagine that others do it regularly, and they do it covertly when there aren't witnesses. Like, for example, on 213, everyone knows where the police hang out to catch speeders, you know, so they don't do it at the bottom of the hill. So that's all I want to say is please believe the reports. Thank you.
Barbara. So at this time, I just want to remind attendees, if you'd like to provide a comment, you can do so now by utilizing the raise hand feature on Zoom. That's at the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device. And if you're on the phone and you want to give a comment, to please hit *9 and that'll let us know that you have a comment. I'm going to, we've received some comments via email from some folks who couldn't make it tonight, but wanted to share their thoughts around race. This one is from Janice. It says, as a white woman with family members of color, I can attest that we have deep work to do in promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion in this county, although we have certainly made progress. As a member of the Baha'i faith, the elimination of stains of prejudice as well as systemic racism are in my heart and actions every moment of the day. I commend the commissioners for being open to hear the experiences of the citizens of our county. The experiences of my family members are too numerous to count, but please don't let the effort stop at listening. Please consult with citizens as well as experts to formulate specific steps that our county can take to make everyone feel welcome and part of this community. And this message is from Lana. Good evening, everyone. I was very glad to hear that the county I live in, Clackamas County, is focusing its energy on race and the inequities that exist in our community and in our institutions. Not only have the county commissioners passed the resolution condemning violence and racism directed at Black, African Americans, and all people of color, and have a citizen committee designated as a liaison to the commissioners on issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. But you have also recently hired a county equity and inclusion officer, Ms. Martine Koblenz. While I applaud your efforts, I do have questions about the extent to which Ms. Koblenz and the citizen committee have the power to act or influence the commissioners to act on injustices and inequities that are brought to their attention. Will Clackamas County use an equity lens in their hiring practices for every department? How will microaggressions that occur within the county offices be addressed? Surely it is understood by all that within all of our institutions, there are the remnants of racist social programming, and they must be rooted out. No one is immune to the racist beliefs and practices that are around us since birth. People will unwittingly be acting in racist ways without meaning to do so. Will there be continuous and ongoing efforts for the staff and the county government to help them learn, grow, and change, and also to chip away at the structures that we now know are faulty? Will the few people who are now responsible for equity and inclusion in Clackamas County be able to influence the system? And to what extent? I fully recommend that the commissioners ensure that Ms. Koblenz has all of the support and resources she needs to do her job to its fullest extent so that she can impact policy and procedure in our county government. I swear I didn't make her say this. I don't know who this is. There is so much hope and potential on the path that we are all on now. We all have to take part in this work for it to be successful. Only when Black, Indigenous, and all people of color are on equitable footing in rights, recognition, and resources, only then can we all be able to live healthy, fruitful lives. So thank you, Janice and Lona. So again, I just want to remind you that if you want to make a comment, to utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom. That's at the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device. And if you're on the phone, you want to give a comment, please hit *9. Okay, so Anne, you can unmute.
Good evening. I'm really glad you're having this meeting. I live in Milwaukee. I went to Milwaukee Elementary, junior high, high school. I've been here a long time. I'm now 70, so I've been here a long time. When I was about 9, we had the first Black family move into Milwaukee. I was so excited. I am a member of the Baha'i faith. We believe that there is unity in all of humanity. We're one family. Lots of variety makes a beautiful garden. It'd be boring if it were all one color. Anyway, so I was excited as a 9-year-old. I was like, yes, we're gonna finally get some diversity. The house was burned down. Sorry, I get emotional about that. As a 9-year-old, that was really hard to take. I couldn't believe people could be so cruel. Then as we got older, of course, fortunately, a few more Black folk came into the county, and now at least they don't burn their houses down. My husband and I are white, and we have had a couple of mixed race friends stay with us, young adults, high school or college age, when they needed a place to just kind of have their act gotten together and go to college with a supportive system. What we experienced was several things. One, the young man who was staying with us, he was a college student at the time, was constantly being pulled over. He wasn't even wearing a hoodie, but it was a bit dark. He was pulled over in Milwaukee doing nothing. There was no reason for that. And I've heard that this happens commonly to people of color, but this is the first time I experienced it in my family, so to speak. There wasn't really anything we could do except commiserate with him. We had a friend who was living in the housing off of 32nd, and the family is very Black, beautiful. And the young woman who was about 16, one of the high school students, would often walk home up 32nd, and she often was getting abuse from general public, but also the police were stopping her, pulling her over. She was just walking home. And finally, because this had happened numerous times, my husband and I went down to the police station, explained that we were aware of this, asked them if they could look into it, and they quit doing it to her. But the fact that such things happened, this was like maybe 20 years ago, so it hadn't gotten better yet. I hear that that at least Gladstone, if not Clackamas County, is looking into maybe getting some part of the curriculum in the schools so that the dialogue can be brought forward. And I hope that will happen, because even though we have a very small percentage of people of color, if we can just let some of them speak and maybe bring in, I don't know if you've heard of Joy O'Leary, but she's an amazing, it's Joy Leary, sorry, L-E-A-R-Y. She's a wonderful resource to consider. But I'm excited that this dialogue is coming to the surface, and I'm really happy to support it and encourage. Thanks.
Anne. Okay, again, anyone with us can hit the raise hand feature to provide a comment. And we have Edward.
That's Ed Grunke. You all know me. I have a couple of African American members in my family. I will not go through their experiences other than to say that my African American daughter-in-law insisted on moving to San Francisco 4 or 5 years ago because she was tired of the racism in the area. We do have racism in our area. I think we all have to agree to that. I know I have a neighbor who is openly racist. What we're dealing with, I think, is an attitude that we've all grown up with. I was born into a racist family in a racist town in western Illinois along the Mississippi River years and years ago, long before any of you were born. My question to the county commission is, other than just give this lip service, what are you going to do about the problem?
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. So the commissioners are here to listen, and I prompted them not to comment to specific comments tonight. So I just want to check in. Is there more that you want to share? They are taking note of your question for sure. Are you complete for now?
Not at this time. I think I've already shared too much. I think a couple of commissioners know of some of my personal experiences. I don't think it's worth going into them at this point.
I appreciate you sharing tonight. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read another email that came in. This is from Jane. Hello, Clackamas County Commissioners. Thank you for holding tonight's town hall on race issues in Clackamas County. I'm reaching out because I want you to know how strongly I support our community's work toward racial justice and equity. Yes, race and racism very much thrives in Clackamas County, and as a community, we desperately need to listen, learn, reflect, and talk about it. I'm unable to attend tonight because as a white resident of Oregon City, I'm attending the simultaneously occurring Oregon City Commission meeting. Oregon City's mayor has harmed our city with his misconduct, dishonesty, and hateful words and actions. Race and racism is alive and well in Oregon City, and tonight my time is spent supporting the Recall Dan Holiday group. Thank you also for passing the resolution condemning violence and racism back in June. Okay. So at this time, I want to bring forward the caller with the last three numbers, 287.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank the county commissioners for hosting this event and also for passing the resolution. And I also want to thank all the callers or the folks that have sent emails. It's really appreciated to hear from our neighbors. I am a resident in Wilsonville, and I've lived here for 20 years. I am Latina, and I am very much involved in community and always wanting to do good for the rest of my community members and be able to also provide information and resources about the Latino community and other communities of color who certainly face oppression, racism, microaggressions, and much more. And I think that what I want to share with you all is that even though I appreciate the fact that you have a chief diversity officer within the county and certainly will be leading this work, it is also important that all of us participate to find solutions and not just be even just yourselves, but the county commissioners, to solve these problems and issues. We have to look at the systemic infrastructure of, policy, practice, and service. And perhaps I don't have anything specific to report that is explicit, but I would like to say that many times it's just the silence. It's just not having direct service. An example I'd like to give you is COVID-19. We know that the Latino community has the highest burden, and yet, the resources, the information is limited within the state of Oregon Latino community, which in itself is racist by not providing resources, information. So I think we need to think about racism not specifically just as the implicit, but also the explicit, or vice versa. We need to be able to build upon community and be able to empower community members so we're all feeling safe. We're all, providing much more to the communities that we live in, to be able to just be able to live in more peace and harmony and be able to support our children. I mean, my kids have faced discrimination as well, racist remarks, but, I also teach them also how to be an active bystander, to speak out for themselves and also to speak out for others. So I think that's really important. So people sometimes, make quick comments or commentaries or jokes, and perhaps, obviously it's our lived experiences of where we grew up, who we grew up with. So that is another area that I think we could all benefit from in regards to how to be better and better neighbors and more welcoming to others that are different from us. So I want to, again, thank you all for hosting this event. And hopefully this will be only just the beginning, because there's many more residents like myself and those that have called that I'm sure are happy to provide recommendations and experiences. But certainly, as the caller noted prior to my commentaries, is what are we going to do? So it should be, what are we going to do, as a county to ensure that there is an elimination of racism, oppression, and, be able to just break down those policies and practices and services that do not allow many of us to be part of the system when we want to be just like everyone else, live that American dream and make sure that our children are successful and are providing to the community at large here in Clackamas County. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, anyone with us can hit the raise hand feature to provide a comment. And if you're on the phone, to hit *9. Okay, so I'm going to read another email that we received from B. It says, racial issues cannot be addressed when the tools needed to have voices heard are removed. The city of Gladstone had their election drop box changed as of the last election, and were unable to locate it on election day. We were unable to locate it on election day, even with a Google map. I suggest we start with better informing residents of locations and changes to voting drop box locations. Okay, at this time, I'm gonna bring in Damaris.
Hello, everyone. I know Gary knows me because I personally work for Clackamas County, and I also want to share that I've lived in Clackamas County my 32 years, actually in Sandy, Oregon, and my childhood in Sandy was really bad. As a child, I didn't have to say I was Mexican. The rest of the kids told me and informed me that I was Mexican because I was different, because of the color of my skin, because of the different languages that I spoke. All my life, I've been affected by racism. I had straight A's, but bullied for the color of my skin. And oftentimes I had to defend myself, right? Because if I didn't defend myself, then of course I would be continued to be bullied. So of course, if you defend yourself, then you are the bad kid. So you're labeled the bad kid, and then it's all because you are defending the color of your skin. So I was never able to just be myself in school. It's always been around me. Racism has always been a part of my life. I've learned to live in your world. I've learned to wake up every day and make you feel comfortable. I've woken up every day to make sure that the white person feels not threatened at all, by any means. And even, you know, I am a Clackamas County employee, and I am part of the EDIC, and I've worked with Gary, and I greatly appreciate Gary's work because he stands by his word and he creates the action. And the reason why I came here is because, of course, I want to really hope to encourage you all to continue the work and follow through with action pieces that are recommended by all people of color. And I greatly appreciate this moment. And on top of that, really start with the top. And what I mean by that is addressing the Justice Department, you know, really going in and seeing policies, what is currently in place that are biased, what are things in there that are currently affecting people of color, and just really addressing that. That's my greatest concern. But of course, I just want to thank you all. I don't want to take up too much time. And I thank you for this moment, and I hope this continues.
Thank you so much, Damaris. And EDIC stands for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, for those of you who don't know. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so at this time, I want to allow Mary. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Nicole. Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I am a resident in Happy Valley. I'm also a wife of a Black man. I am a white woman, and I have 3 biracial children who attend local schools. As part of the Happy Valley United City Community Alliance, Tiffany Parrott and I are co-chairs. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for allowing this time. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but it kind of gave me a little inspiration to see you guys listening. It's been a long time coming. I feel like people haven't been listening for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And now's the time to start making changes to all your policies, making sure that every person is allowed the opportunity to hold jobs, to hold positions in within your commission, within each city, and to give our children the opportunity to see people being successful. The United Community Alliance of Happy Valley started just as a grassroots group of people who wanted to see change after some pretty major racial issues that happened due to a school name discussion. And we have been working on DEI work for the last couple of years, and we would love to have the opportunity to speak with you at any time. And if you have questions for us, I think that's a way for you guys to learn more, is to speak with the different affinity groups within the county. So I just wanted to reach a hand out to you that we are available. And I think there's groups all over the county that would say the same thing. But the only way to make change is for us white people to come together and stand up and allow the voices that need to be heard from the Black community, from the Latinx community, from every community. Allow those people the space to stand up and be heard, and then take action. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so now we want to bring in Mary. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I think I just unmuted myself. I'd like to add my voice to the thanking the commissioners for providing this opportunity. I think it's genuinely needed. I'm a resident of Gladstone, and we have had some movement in Gladstone actually since the death of George Floyd, in terms of bringing racism and equity issues to the forefront here in Gladstone. We've developed a community discussion group on the subject. We've gotten the Gladstone City Council to do a listening session. One of the voices of that listening session, well, two of the voices actually, were young women who have recently graduated from the high school, who are young women of color. And the appalling, truly appalling stories that they told us about the length and depth of the discrimination that they suffered at that high school from students, from staff, has me genuinely concerned. And I realize that there may not be a whole lot of connection between the community, the county commissioners and the school boards, may or may not, I'm not sure how that works, but I feel so very strongly that this needs to be addressed at the school level, from elementary on up to high school, but certainly at high school. Not only is these kinds of racial demonstrations, it's not just bad for the children of color, it's also bad for the kids who are coming from families where they're being taught perhaps some racism in their family situation. Those kids need to be presented with an alternative as well. Because my biggest concern is for the kids. The kids are our future. And the kids of color in our communities need to be heard. They need to be accommodated, invigorated, whatever. Our first speaker, Mr. Blackwell, I think his name was, mentioned that the county commissioner might be interested in encouraging economic development on the part of Black and Latinx and other companies to come into the county and employ more people of color. That's not going to happen if the schools are a bad situation for those families' kids. So the kids are genuinely being abused. And at the same time, it's not good for the white kids either to be raised with those kinds of attitudes that are not going to do them well into the 21st century. I think we really need to focus on the kids, and if there's any way, certainly in Gladstone, that we can reach out to the school board, we're going to be doing it, and trying to level the playing field for all of the kids in our community, because everything that's happening is going to affect the kids, all of the kids, and that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so I would like to share a message from Camarina. It says, this topic is important to me because as a person of color in this county, there have been many times I have not felt welcomed and experienced microaggressions and harassment. In prior roles, I have witnessed the massive disparities that disenfranchise and oppress the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color community. I have had negative experiences with police, being stopped several days in a row when driving to and from work in Canby. Every time for a different reason. I don't have a record or drive erratically. Makes me wonder if brown residents in Canby are stopped by police at a higher rate than white residents. Based on police records in other places, I wouldn't be surprised this is the case. I read the statement put out by the commissioners. I am wondering how they plan to keep themselves and other agencies accountable to revising policies. How much funding will be allocated how much funding will be allocated to allow the county, for the county to be equitable, I think is what it's trying to say. What is their year 1, year 2, and year 3 plan for being a safer county for Black, Indigenous, and people of color folks? So thank you, Camarina. Thank you, B, for your comments. And we're going to allow for Ben. Ben, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a Chinese American and I grew up in Clackamas County and went to Rex High School. And I've experienced microaggressions and explicit racism pretty much all my life. When my grandparents immigrated here, they had to ask every white person on the block for permission to live next to them. The echoes of Orientalism and racism are still felt today. I got into my first fight over my race. Every moment of my life in this county, I've had to represent all Asians in the eyes of white peers and authority figures. And now, in the time of the so-called China virus, I feel that it's imperative that you exercise your power to make sure that people understand that we are Americans and we aren't all carriers of the virus. We contribute to this community. I'm sorry if I made you young, Martha. Okay, that's it.
My youngest son is Korean. I've experienced it.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, I'm gonna read a message from, oh, I'm sorry, Ben, were you complete?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna read a message from Sarah. It says, I'm a business owner, mother, and teacher, and want to say thank you for having this discussion. Racial equity and justice are very important to the health and strength of Clackamas County. And like much of our country, we have a lot of work to do to make sure we are a place of equal opportunity for all our neighbors. Please prioritize Black, Indigenous, people of color voices and calls to action. I am white and think it's time we listen, believe, and commit to following our Black, Indigenous, people of color community. Thank you, and I look forward to joining in more of this work with you. Okay, and so at this time, if you are with us and you'd like to share a comment, please use the raise hand feature. And if you're on the phone, dial *9 and that will let us know that you want to speak. Okay, so I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time. So I'd like to offer commissioners the chance to share what's on your mind. Oh, I do see a raised hand. I see a couple raised hands. Sorry, I'm going to go to the raised hands first, and then we'll open it to commissioners. So Adam, I'm going to bring you in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I am Adam Erickson. I am a pastor at Clackamas United Church of Christ. And I wanted to first thank you, as everybody else has, for having this conversation. As a pastor, a faith leader, I wish that I did not have to say the following, that faith leaders, people of faith throughout Clackamas County are with you in this struggle. And it breaks the heart of my congregation that I have to come on here and tell you that Christians are wanting you to do this crucial and important work of combating the systemic racism that exists in our county, that exists throughout Portland, and exists throughout the United States from the beginning of our history. We are blind. I, as a white man, have been blind to the systemic racism that I grew up with here in the Portland area. And that you are having this conversation is a gift to me, is a gift to our faith. And I wish I hate saying this, but I wish that we didn't have to do this. The Abrahamic faiths say that we are to be a blessing to all of the families of the earth. And as a white man, I have been blessed throughout all of my life. I've been told that I matter. And it is time that we, as people of faith, as people of no faith, come together and say that Black lives matter, brown lives matter, Asian lives matter. You've heard the stories today. Thank you for giving space for us to listen to those stories. And as a person of faith, I just want to encourage you to rise up in this moment in our history, because God wants us to care for all of the families of the earth, especially the most vulnerable. And in the Portland area, we know that people, brown people, Black people, are vulnerable when it comes to housing, when it comes to employment. And thank you for the work that you are doing.
Thank you very much, Adam. I want to bring in a caller with the last 3400. Are you there to unmute yourself, please? Caller with the last 3 digits. Oh, are you there?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, 400 you said, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Anitra Ravani, and I am a light-skinned daughter of a Muslim immigrant. And so I have functioned most of my life in Clackamas County with white privilege. And there's been a lot of talk on this call with, you know, folks asking how the commissioners, how you plan to hold yourself accountable. And one of the questions that I would like answered, you know, and maybe not in a public forum, but I hope at least personally, is how are you culpable and what are you learning? You know, I've been asking myself these questions, and it's really hard and it's really ugly. And I am responsible for perpetuating some harm with my white privilege over the course of my life. And I think we need to be asking, you know, those, especially those in leadership who have those positions of power and have functioned within, you know, our systems that have valued that privilege. You know, where can you improve, and what have you done in the past, and how can you move forward and rectify? For example, as a member of the Jennings Lodge CPO several years ago, the Jennings Lodge Candy Lane School moved to become a full Spanish immersion program. And members of the CPO were angry, and I listened to community members denigrate native Spanish speakers at a public meeting with no comment from leadership. And I stood up at the meeting and tried to, and made my points and tried to set a corrective action. I was not supported by leadership. And after the meeting, I should have, and I didn't, follow up with leadership and hold them accountable for what they allowed and the lack of corrective action that happened after that. I cannot imagine, had anybody been a person of color at that meeting, how that would have felt, how they would have felt welcome. And that is a direct arm of the county. So one of the specific things that I would like to see moving forward is as we talk about what the county is going to do and how it's going to, and how diversity efforts are going to move through county offices and so forth, I'd like to see that extended to all of the branches, including the volunteer branches, the CPOs, the hamlets, and every part that's under the county umbrella, because that shouldn't have happened. And I should have done more, and I didn't. So thank you for thank you for having this conversation now. Thank you to everyone who's sharing. And that's it.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, we have, we're gonna bring forward Nadalyn.
Hi, yes, this is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. My name is Nadalyn Biguet. I am a member of a Native tribe. I'm apologize because I was late to the meeting and I didn't get the chance to see if there was a land acknowledgement at the beginning of this call. So if I just want to take time to acknowledge that we sit on stolen lands, and of many tribes that occupied the areas along the Columbia River and the Willamette, and we honor their lives and recognize the sacrifices they endured. I would encourage the commissioners and other county employees to continue this important land acknowledgement for our original inhabitants of this land, and also recognize that it is stolen land that we operate all of our businesses and organizations on. I'm a former, I actually moved from Clackamas to a different county because of my experiences, and however still provide services through the work that I perform in a nonprofit organization to the Clackamas County residents that are Indigenous. And I just want to encourage more resources to continue to be funded, or to start being funded and to continue funding for our family services. Thank you for this opportunity. I think listening sessions are amazing because it just gives a chance to really soak up what the community is feeling, and we feel heard. And so I really thank you for the opportunity. And again, just re-emphasizing that attitude, racism starts in the home, and prejudice starts in the home, and our prevention efforts really should start in the home and with our families. So thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, and we have Elena. Oops, I'm sorry. We have Rita. Elena, you'll go next.
Hi, my name is Rita, and I was born and raised in Central California with a large migrant population. The grade school that I went to was very diverse with multicultural, multiracial, multi-economic spectrum. I didn't know what prejudice or racism was until I got into junior high and went to school with kids who had gone to either an all-white or an all-black school. I am currently a foster parent. I have been a foster parent for teenage girls for the last 20 years in Clackamas County. And I just, before the commissioners have a chance to talk, I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a very, very complex issue. I've had all different races of girls in my home, and their experiences have been everything from being called names, but a lot of what they talk to me about are things that are so insidious in that they often talk about being followed when they're in stores, about how that they're looked at differently. And it's hard for me as a white woman to understand that, but I believe what they tell me, and I know what they tell me is true. But as county commissioners, you have a certain level that you can address as far as policies and some procedures and things, but the issue is so complex and so diverse and so broad that even as county commissioners, I'm not expecting that you can fix the problem. So I just wanted to put that out there before you guys had a chance to make your comments. But it's definitely conversations that need to be had. Actually, with having many Latino and Black girls in my home, I have often found that the Latino girls are suffer more than the Black girls do as far as racial prejudice against them. So anyway, those are my comments, and thank you.
Rita. Okay, we have a couple more raised hands, so we're going to bring on Elena.
Hi, my name's actually Mindy, but
Oh.
my account's under my daughter's name, so sorry.
Okay.
You got her name right, it is Elena. So thank you again, like everybody else said, to the commissioners for having this listening session and passing the resolution. I want to talk a little bit about hope. I have been married to my husband for 21 years, and we have been together for 12 years before we had my daughter. And growing up in a really small white town, you know, I was first exposed to racism being with him and being refused service, being refused cabs, being refused apartments, being assumed that we were not together, being asked about who he was and if he was bothering me. But my daughter was born 10 days after Barack Obama was sworn in, and I had hope. I felt very hopeful for her that some changes were coming. And I have to say, over the last 11 years, the hope diminishes every time she comes home and tells me she's been called the N-word in 3rd grade, or told that all African Americans look alike, or been asked if she was adopted, or received comments about how hard it must be to keep her hair untangled. And those are all very minor things. We have not had the discrimination of being denied housing or jobs. She's very privileged in a lot of ways because she has parents that are together. We're upper class. We live in a safe neighborhood. Our neighbors are very kind. And she has lots of friends, and she does well in school. So all of this stuff has been minor in some ways, but I see it building up in her because when you're
Oh, Mindy, I think we lost you. You cut off. Are you still there?
as things continue in this country and in this community. And I have to say, there's lots of things I love about Oregon City and I love about our county. Our schools are looking at a No Hate for Place program in the schools. Our library is doing an anti-racism book club. But then when I hear things like the Proud Boys being at our demonstrations and then shooting somebody in a bar, it makes me feel less safe for my family. When people ask in Oregon City Chit Chat about supporting Black businesses and there's one in our entire town, that diminishes my hope. And as the commissioners, I'm sorry, I'm not so familiar with what the county could do and I need to learn more, but you can be leaders and there's lots of great suggestions. One is, you know, I'm part of a group called Unite Oregon City who's doing some work in our town to build inclusivity. And there was somebody from Happy Valley who was on here working with outreach to those groups, outreach to the schools, looking at what different towns are doing that give them best practices and ideas. But really, I love what the last caller said about we all have to look at ourselves and say, what am I doing? How am I being culpable? Even as, you know, a mom of a biracial kid, I'm white, and there's times that I probably downplay what's happening to her. And so we have to ask ourselves those hard questions. We have to put policies in place, but mostly it's about discussion. It's about education. It's about learning and being willing to grow. And that comes from these sessions, that comes from leadership, that comes from people saying, you know, I made a mistake and I did something wrong and this is how I can do better. But also because the more we have those discussions and the more welcoming our county is, hopefully we can go from one Black business in Oregon City to several. We have food carts coming in and I'd love to see some diversity in our business ownership. You know, I just love to see people feeling more safe in our communities. And I appreciate you looking at ways you can do this, you know, in the Justice Department and the Police Department and the county, and policies and hiring practices and housing. So just thank you very much for listening to us, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
Thank you, Mindy. Okay, we have one. Oh, we have Leticia. Leticia, right
Yes, yes, I'm here. I am a resident of Wilsonville. I moved here 5.5 years ago from Southern California. I'm half Puerto Rican, half Euro-American, and like many callers, I can share experiences of being followed in stores, being asked for receipts for materials that I'm carrying in to return. As a part of our community, we've been having conversations about race and how individuals are impacted, and there definitely needs to be strong leadership, and I echo what some of the other callers have said about continuing to learn and being transparent about the learning process for county officials and employees, and telling us how are you engaging in these conversations over time. How are county officials processing this information and being given space and the opportunity to learn as a part of the way that you're serving us in the community, because it takes time. And I know that a lot of my friends and colleagues here in Wilsonville support any actions where you're given the opportunity to ask those questions and learn as we all go on this endeavor of becoming a more inclusive community. In addition to that, leadership in the judicial system and our Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, that there is a sustained effort to make sure that leadership, I know our officers are trained fairly well in terms of maybe exploring bias. That's my understanding, that their training is robust at the academy, but what does that look like in terms of local leadership? Once individuals come into these different structures, are the structures supporting these kind of conversations, or are we recruiting individuals to come into either into positions where they don't have an opportunity to ask these hard questions? Do we have structures in place for people to anonymously share their stories because maybe they don't even feel comfortable calling in today? So I hope to hear next steps that really include more listening and more learning. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. So we have time for one last person, Heather. Right, Heather, are you there?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, I'm Pastor Heather Riggs of Oak Grove United Methodist Church. Hi, Paul. I see you smiling. It's good to see all of you tonight, commissioners. Thank you. And as well, I want to say thank you to all of the people of color in our community who have courageously shared their stories tonight. As a white person, I was kind of sitting back and listening because that's my job in a lot of these spaces. But I also want to speak up as a community leader to share some of what I am seeing. A lot of the community folks in our neighborhood walk through the church parking lot in our neighborhood, and many of our neighbors of color have said that they have been harassed by their neighbors. One particular neighbor who has two beautiful young teenage children who are Black, those children have been called the N-word as they walk through our community, and that is not okay. So I want to raise that as this is a pertinent issue. I see it, we all see it, and echo the voices of my neighbors of color. But I also want to say, in terms of things that we can do within the county, I will say that overall my experiences with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office have been positive. And most of my neighbors of color have also said that they have mostly had positive experiences. But I also understand that not all the experiences have been positive. And I have also had some uncomfortable experiences with deputies who wanted my church to take down our rainbow flags. Otherwise, they weren't willing to use my church as a rest stop. And that concerns me because as county employees, the sheriffs need to be held to the same standard of inclusion and diversity training as all the other county employees. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we need to be able to have some sense of accountability. And, you know, being married to a former law enforcement officer, it's been known for a long time that being a member of a white supremacist group doesn't prevent you from being hired as a law enforcement officer. And it should. We need to be taking a closer look at what the people who represent us and who are supposed to keep us safe believe, but also housing. Because when we resist the new state law about increasing the amount of infill housing in our neighborhoods where housing is so desperately needed, we are shutting out families of color. Stop resisting. We can do this. Trust us. Trust the landowners that we live in these neighborhoods too. I would love to be able to build some housing at my church. Work with us. Work with us on the zoning. We live here. We want it to be a good neighborhood for everybody, and everybody needs everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. So we do have one last hand raise. I want to bring in Juanita, and then we will turn to the commissioners.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Juanita. I actually do not live in Clackamas County anymore, but I frequent because I live in Troutdale, which, as you know, leaving Troutdale to go to Clackamas is very easy, or going to Sandy. Just on Monday, there was a rally in Sandy, and I was going to go to a family member's house out there. And I was not paying attention really, and I drove past the Sandy Safeway where there were Trump supporters, and I got stopped right in the midst of it and literally was attacked, telling me to go back to where I came from, get out of Sandy, you don't belong here. And it startled me, and I actually was on the phone with my sister at the time, and I'm like, okay, well, there's Black people that support Trump. How do you know that's not me? But just to be told to get out, I was terrified, and I got out. I left. And that's a scary situation in the Black community. We definitely have areas where we're told not to go. We're told not to go to Oregon City. We're told not to patronize in Sandy. Like, I posted that, and they're like, that you don't belong in Sandy, don't go to Sandy. Don't go to Oregon City. If you're there, don't go there after dark. It's very scary. I will say that in the last couple of years, Oregon City has started to change. But that's just, to me, changing, becoming more urban, more up to date with times, but the racial tension is still there. I lived in Lake Oswego, which is still not part of, I think Lake Oswego might be Clackamas. Yes, it is Clackamas. I lived in Lake Oswego for 5-6 years, raised a family, and I loved it there. I will say the police out there were amazing. I didn't have any interactions really with them but a ticket, and I could walk freely through there. I was married, I had an interracial marriage, and I had a mixed child, but it's just day and night when you go to certain parts. And I don't think that you guys can tell someone not to be racist, but like the pastor was saying, inclusion, housing, letting minorities know of all skin, Latinos, Blacks, Asians, that you're welcomed in the town, and it's not just predominantly white. It's really hard in Oregon because we are, especially being Black, we are the 4%, but making things affordable. I tried to rent a house in Oregon City, and I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to rent that house as soon as I walked in the door. And that was not too long ago. I think this is a step towards being positive, but what can you do to include minorities? And I think the housing is a good idea. Having, well, COVID, we have COVID, having more, I don't know, festivals and things like that to include, to bring the community together. You can't stop racism. I don't know how you guys think you are going to be able to do that. It's hard because you can't change someone's mind. So I feel for all of you that are willing to sit here and hear all of us discuss things of what's happened to us, but unfortunately in those towns it's a very strong hold. And so hopefully there will be some change, but I would be very open to hearing what ideas that you all have or what you think that can help remedy some of those issues, because children are killing themselves from being terrorized at school. That happened in Oregon City not too long ago, and bullying of people of color. I'm terrified. I might have to move to Clackamas County due to work, and there's certain parts where I don't want my children who are half Mexican and half Black to go to school there. I would have to try to get them into a different area, see if I could use my parents' address in Portland so they wouldn't have to go to school out there. And that's the reality that we're dealing with. But that's all of that I have to say, and thank you for your time for listening.
Thank you very much, Juanita, for sharing. I want to I just want to say first, thank you all for sharing, those of you who wrote to us and those of you who spoke live tonight. Now I want to turn to our commissioners. I see Chair Bernard. You have something you'd like to say, and then we'll go to Commissioner Savas.
Okay. First, I don't think any of us think we're going to resolve racism in Clackamas County. I mean, it's like people say, it's not anything we can solve today, but we can have an impact. I think first I want to apologize that Tori has to get up every day and smile just because he thinks if he doesn't, he's representing all Black people are angry if they don't smile. Or the one woman who said she has to make sure that we feel safe. I just can't imagine that. I've lived in this county my entire life. I've obviously lived a sheltered life because I, until recently, didn't know this existed. I'm born and raised in Milwaukee. I think I heard somebody say there was one Black family. They didn't live near me, and I never went to school with a Black kid until I went to LaSalle. And there was one of them. My father, when the Japanese were interned, the community got together and kept the land for the farmers to come back to after the internment camps closed. So I'm proud of them for that. But when a Black young man would walk up the street, he'd grab the cash register. And I know he didn't think he was racist. He had Black friends. When he tried to get a member of Chinese descent in one of the paternal organizations and they refused him, he quit that organization. I know that we won't be able to solve this problem. I'm sorry, I got to apologize that I've got a little less than 4.5 months ahead of me. And these folks are going to be here to carry this on. And I'm sure they will. I'm sure they love this county as much as I do. And so I'm going to do as a no longer a leader in 4.5 months, I'm going to do my best to make sure that that I can do what I can do to change this county and make it a place that everyone can feel safe. So thank you all so much. I've learned so much in just an hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Savas, and we'll have, all the commissioners will have an opportunity to share.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for participating tonight. It was great to hear the stories. I always felt and believe and still believe that hearing the stories, sharing your stories with others is powerful, and I think that we will all learn from this. I'm hopeful that, and I've talked to Martine about this, I've talked to our former Equity and Diversity Inclusion Officer, Emmett, about this. I really think that we need to do as much as we can with youth in school. And if I believe if you're raised with that kind of knowledge and education and issues, and if it's around you, you will have a better understanding. And I did. I was fortunate, I guess. I really believe I was fortunate. My family is I'm the lighter skinned in my family, and I'm the oldest of 7 brothers and sisters. I had to defend my other brothers and sisters, especially those who were darker than I was. I have other family members in my family that of different race, and so we've been well, not myself. I have grown up with white privilege to a degree, so I recognize that. But the stories that my grandmother told me, how my family immigrated from Constantinople in Turkey. So part of our family is Middle Eastern, part of our family is European. I'm mostly Greek, but we have a mixed family. But we were outcast, and in our neighborhood, in our mixed neighborhoods and where I grew up in, the families that we got along with and we were friends with were of different race. They weren't white, and they were either Hispanic, Mexican, Puerto Rican. My best friends growing up were Puerto Rican and Black. And where I worked in Long Beach, California, it was where my Black friends were, and where I grew up, it was mostly Puerto Rican, Asian, Philippine, Hispanic, all different nationalities. So I saw people bullied. I saw people beat up. I lost a dear friend that was beat to death. So I understand this. I grew up with it. So what can we do? I think, one of the things we're doing it tonight. We're listening, and everyone's listening. And I think to get that message out, to have people to share those stories is one of the things we read in the resolution. We, therefore, be it resolved, we will do those 5 things that each of us read, a line out of that. And Jim's right, we're not going to solve this, but we can make improvements. We can improve upon, we can educate, and we can show by example, and we can lead by example, and we can lead by doing all the things we can do, policies and everything we read to you. I am 100% committed to living up to everything we put in that resolution and everything that's about that resolution, because it does matter and it's real to me. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I thank you all for hanging on. We want to give some time for the other commissioners to share. So if you're able to stay on with us, please do. And I don't see raised hands, so should I call on you? Okay. Commissioner Fisher, do you want to share next?
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody sharing. Thank you so much for the conversation. And there were many comments that resonated with me, and I think I can speak for all of my commissioners when I say I'm pretty sure we all felt some pretty intense emotions while we were listening. Very, very critical stories, and they make such a difference. So one piece that I really want to respond to was the question about what are we doing to hold ourselves accountable. And it's true, we can't solve racism, but racism is about power and greed that creates structures and systems that separate people and keep people down and discriminated against. And we are the local government of Clackamas County. So there is quite a bit that we can do. Paul mentioned our resolution, that we have some action steps. Tori mentioned Reimagine Oregon. That's an effort that all of our commission has been involved in, which looks at specific policies that seek to eradicate systematic racism. That there are so many different places where systematic racism comes up, and we can address that. We can, as the county commission. We do need the community to help us and to be with us and to share what's happening. There's so many points. I saw a rally in Oregon City with some Confederate flags. I didn't know that that rally was also in Sandy and other areas. So that information is really important for us to know. The stories of telling people to go back where they came from, we need to know that, because we are in conversations with the different law enforcement entities. We need to share these stories. We need to be connected and say we don't stand for this in Clackamas County. So it all starts here. It starts with building the community that we are creating together, and it's about power. It's about changing policies. We together can do that, and this board, we're committed, and I've appreciated all of the collaboration and the connection from everyone. And thank you, Chair Bernard, for helping to lead us and to push for the resolution. Really appreciate your leadership there, and we got lots of work to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Humberston?
Thank you. I listened very carefully to what people said tonight, and it was very emotional. But I don't think we can really truly understand at an in-depth level what people go through that they have described today, because we haven't had to go through it ourselves, and probably never will have to, quite frankly. I also know that government can't change people's hearts, and I don't know how you do that. But there are things that government can do, and in that role, there are some things that I believe we can do. They are somewhat outlined in the resolution, but we need to continue to listen. Because if we don't continue to listen, if we don't continue to be reminded that these things are occurring, it is too easy to let things slide and move on to other things. We can set the example in terms of how we behave, how we act towards other people. We can make sure that we hire more people of color and other diverse groups of people. Because when you come into the Clackamas County offices, you should be able to see yourself across the counter. I think that's very important. It's a way of telling people that they are welcome in Clackamas County. We can make sure that our policies and our procedures are not discriminatory, and that they're applied fairly, equitably, and equally to everyone who comes to our offices. And finally, we need to do this in conjunction with our 16 cities, and I think it's something like 27 school districts. This is not just Clackamas County. This is all government agencies. We're going to have to coordinate how we deal with this, because we're all in this together. And Martine, you have heard me say this before. I don't want to lose talent working for Clackamas County because we are not welcoming. I want the best, the smartest, the brightest people that we can find working for our county, and they have to feel welcome if they're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Last but not least, Commissioner Schrader.
So back in 1970, I was an American Field Service student to the Philippines. And they told us that the kids that got sent to Southeast Asia, you know, that they felt that we could cope with a totally different culture and different folks. And it was a great experience for me. And indeed, tomorrow, my Filipino sister, Elena, and her daughter, they're going to be coming up to stay with me because her grandson's going to the University of Portland. So this was a lifelong relationship for me. And indeed, I'm still in contact not only with Elena, but her sister Luz and my sister Ting Ting. But the point is, one of the things that my parents did, and at the time I was only 16 or 17, and I grew up very similar to Paul, where I was a kid with the Italian American kids, Puerto Rican kids, the Black kids, Jewish kids. It was pretty much a melting pot. So, you know, I grew up in this kind of group of people. But the point was that my parents, my mother, who was a nurse at the local hospital and was a supervisor, really became very close to the Filipino American community even before I left to go to the Philippines. They were physicians, nurses, and doctors. So when I came back, my Filipino family, they needed sponsorship. They were highly educated, they were lab techs, they were physicians, they were nurses. And my mother and father basically sponsored a good portion of the family to come over here and to work here, because at the time you couldn't do that unless you had people who were saying, we'll be responsible for you and that we will look out for you and we will be there. And at the time, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh my gosh, that's what you do, you know? And I was pretty proud of my mom and my dad and my grandmother because they just opened up the house and their hearts to everybody. But I remember here recently, not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, I mentioned this on a Facebook post. And I was upset to get a very negative reaction that here my family was helping these immigrants come to this country. And it was pretty shocking to me. I remember how upset I was because I kept thinking, how could anybody not think that's a good thing to do? And so that was one story. The other story is that when I first came to Oregon, of course, I'd come from a pretty integrated community. We all hung together, we were all in theater together, we all did, music together, all that kind of cool stuff you did when you were a kid. And I mentioned to somebody when I just first moved here, just didn't even have kids yet with Kurt. And somebody asked me, oh, you're from, I said, where'd you grow up? I said, well, New York. And the response was, oh, that's where all those, the N-word was used, come from. So I remember my immediate response in Oregon was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it here. I really don't. I was pretty, and it's not that I don't think I've had white privilege, because I think I have in more ways than one: college, opportunity, the whole 9 yards. But I was really in a bubble where I lived. I was grateful to have that experience of diversity and community and acceptance. Not just with the kids I hung out with and the family, but the fact that my own parents kind of lived that ethos in a way that's influenced me to today. So here I'm a commissioner, and what I really think we need to do in a tangible sense is this. I do think we need to continue to convene community conversations that are educational. Even someone like myself, I keep thinking, well, I kind of get it. But with the reading I'm doing and the books I'm looking at, to really understand our history as the United States of America and how insidious the systematic oppression of people of color has been, is still, to me, something that even I'm like, oh my stars, I never saw it that way. I never heard it that way. I never realized that Sally Hemings, for example, was 14 when Thomas Jefferson was 40 years old, you know, and how she pretty much forced him in France to free her so her children could be free. There's a lot about our history that I just feel that we're unaware of. And I think for people to understand where this comes from and to have an in-depth knowledge of it is going to be important. So I think we ought to talk to our school districts. I think we ought to talk to our community college folks. I think we ought to convene speakers and people who are experts in this area, Tori Blackwell being one of them, to really look at this so we can understand that we can't gloss over our history. This is systemic, but it's going to be our responsibility in order to make the change is to understand where we came from and where we're going to go. So if I was just to make a tangible suggestion, I think I'd like to see if that's something that this county can convene with other folks. However, Martine has just gotten on board and I don't want to overwhelm you. This is also overwhelming anyway. It's just also overwhelming. We're going to have to pace ourselves as we move forward because it's emotional, it's heart-wrenching, and if we don't pace ourselves, we'll burn out. So that would be my suggestion, and I thank my colleagues for being here. And I do want to assure everyone that spoke tonight, I think this is an issue, as Commissioner Fisher said, that's near and dear to all of our hearts. And I think that you have the right people in place to continue this education for our entire county. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Again, thank you all for participating tonight and for all of you who have hung around past the 7:30 hour. Really appreciate all of your participation. And this is true, community engagement will happen over time. It's a process. It's about giving space and learning. I took note of what one of our community members shared tonight. And it is an iterative process as well. So our county commissioners will stay engaged and connected, and our Equity and Inclusion Office is now in place. We thank you for participating, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you for your hard work, Martine. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.